The end of chapters 2 and 3 of Black Myth Wukong may have confused everyone, and I admit I was one of them, but there is a theme that these two chapters share regarding root nature. Both the Yellow Wind Sage and Yellowbrow are called Yellow. Both have fought and defeated Wukong, and both required divine intervention to be stopped. If you predicted that the fox in chapter 4 would end up being a trick, then you weren't the only one, and this is the essence of root nature. In this video I'll try to briefly explain exactly what these two confusing chapters and their animations were trying to say. Just to note that this is my interpretation. If you have any thoughts or ideas, or if I get anything wrong, then feel free to let me know in the comments below. It's always good to see the discussions around this game. I've always found it interesting how different cultures use different methods to convey their tales and mythologies, and one of the most popular ways is the use of animals. So check out my video on Sekiro and its use of animals to convey subtle horror elements. In chapter 2, the relic is in the hands of the Yellow Wind Sage, and although his origins are largely unknown in other renditions, in the game he was once a celestial being that was sent to beat a great drum to stop the sound of the sunset boiling, which was something that scared the inhabitants. The people then began worshipping Buddha because of this, and the king did not like this. So he did everything he could to stop it by changing the name of the country to Sihali and banning any mention of Buddha. This led to Buddha sending this giant insect that would appear and kill the inhabitants anytime the drum was beaten. This is where we come in. In a flashback quest, we help the Yellow Wind Sage defeat the insect terrorizing the people. However, after this, Buddha slowly turned the population into rats and assigned the Bodhisattva to keep a close eye on them. In Journey to the West, Wukong faces the Yellow Wind Sage and is essentially bested by the rat due to its use of wind as a power. The wind symbolizes the overwhelming and often incomprehensible power of nature, which can be both life-giving and life-taking. It is a force that humans must respect and learn to live with rather than attempting to dominate. Wukong has to seek the help from the Bodhisattva, who ultimately provides him with a wind-quelling fan to neutralize the demon's power. The resolution of this conflict underscores the theme that nature's forces can be harmonized, but only through understanding and spiritual wisdom. Now, the animation seems to be completely unrelated to the main story. These two characters never show up in the main game, at least I don't think so. They serve as sort of a metaphorical substitution for a mortal man and the Yao Guai, or the demons. The animation uses the white fox as a stand-in for the Yao Guai, representing the idea of something that is inherently wild or untamed. The man, in turn, represents the human desire to control or change what is wild, but ultimately falls back on his own primal instincts when faced with the unchangeable nature of the fox. The root nature of the creature is so powerful that it dictates the man's actions, even if those actions are based on fear and imagination rather than reality. The voice at the end even questions the idea that none should disturb what's decided, referring to the idea that we cannot change and should not change the fundamental nature of creatures. This leads directly into the debate we hear of in chapter 3 between Yellowbrow and Jinchanzi. So Yellowbrow was a disciple of Maitreya Buddha, who is this childlike deity, also known as the Laughing Buddha, potentially the future Buddha of this world. Jinchanzi is a disciple of the Buddha and the previous incarnation of Tang Sanzang, or the Tang monk. Both Yellowbrow and Jinchanzi are associates in the heavenly realm, and a debate is had about the true reason as to why some beings are more superior than others. Yellowbrow transforms into what looks like a Chinese giant soft-shell turtle and washes up on the shores of a poor village, which I'm a big fan of, by the way, make sure you subscribe. And his insides were made of great riches, medicine that cured diseases, and other remedies that turned people young and beautiful, in which the villagers relished in, treating him like a deity or a miracle. We then see this lone beggar initiate an attack on the turtle to seize as much of the riches as he can for himself, initiating a larger scale revolt that cannot be contained. Everyone else also jumps at the opportunity, as sitting idle would mean you would miss out on this opportunity. Upon rewatching this scene, you can see the beggar's collar being pulled as if there was some sort of influence from an external source. Yellowbrow himself. He may have triggered this phenomenon of minority influence just to prove a point to Jinshanzi. In their discussion after everything has gone down, Jinshanzi also hints at this by saying that he sows chaos in hearts just for the sake of winning, suggesting that Yellowbrow was the match that lit the fire. This animation occurs before the events of Journey to the West and the game, and unfortunately the story goes that Yellowbrow steals these magical symbols from Maitreya Buddha that can trap anyone inside, and escapes to the mortal world, where he sets up his own kingdom. In Journey to the West, Yellowbrow uses this symbol to capture the Tang monk and his companions, including Sun Wukong and Zhu Baizi. His cunning nature makes him a formidable opponent. Sun Wukong, despite his immense strength and magical capabilities, finds it challenging to defeat Yellowbrow due to the demon's deceptive tactics and the power of the Buddha's symbols. Wukong is defeated until he prays for the Maitreya Buddha, who saves them by tricking Yellowbrow into taking a toy pagoda that is promised to make him mightier, only to expand and trap him inside. We later find out in Chapter 5 that Yellowbrow also participated in the killing of Wukong at the start of the game, and received a relic for it from Erling Shun, meaning he was freed at some point, either by being forgiven by the Buddha or at least the celestial courts. And here we are at this point. He explains the debate to us, telling us that Jinshanzi said, "Why then do we tower, while others merely kneel and offer?" Yellowbrow sets out to prove a point to Jinshanzi in the animation that humans were lesser because they would always resort to their true nature of greed and selfishness. The hypocrisy in this is that Yellowbrow himself was displaying the exact behaviors as these people he was humiliating. Jinshanzi was correct in assuming that all souls could be akin to them, and Yellowbrow was the embodiment of this perversion of his root nature. He was not born a mortal, and yet he behaved like one. A conflict between material and spiritual. Yellowbrow had chosen the material to the point that he was corrupting others around him and refusing to take accountability. Even in the animation, the turtle indulges in gluttonous behavior and luxury. The assumption is that humans are humans and will act as humans do, with self-interest, envy, and greed. Monkeys are monkeys and they will be agile, unassumingly strong, and charming. Rats are rats, being cunning, elusive, and quick-witted. Foxes are foxes, pigs are pigs, and so on and so forth. These assumptions cannot be beaten and will absolutely be true most of the time due to it being the root of their nature. The evidence of this is in the fact that both the Yellow-Winged Sage and the Yellowbrow, both being corrupted so badly that they defeated Wukong and divine intervention was needed to stop them. Both of them were called Yellow in reference to the tainting of white, a fall from grace, and a return to their most primitive natures. This reinforces the idea that mortals alone are not sufficient enough to fully understand or rectify the forces of nature. The only thing one can do is address their own true nature, and then perhaps, like in the case of Wukong, all the demons and spirits within you can be subdued in the ultimate quest for truth and spiritual awakening.
无魂无魄的僵尸虫去，从此六根合一，西游重续。不成不成。